But I think I'm gonna wait until I get these wires plugged in, and I decided to use terminals instead of just wire tent and put them in there. I found some good terminals for the block. So I just need to take my multimeter and go down it and check out, make sure they're all continuity, you know. Otherwise I don't want a continuity here and here. I just continuity for each one all the way down. Make sure that nothing's on the same circuit. So I need to do that. Well, the console's done. Got that all dialed in. Everything's hooked up. Power switch, forward reverse switch, and USB port, charge port. These are those little clips that go underneath, and that way you can put a wire tie in either direction, either this way or that way, you know. And what I do is I peel this off and I squirt it with some 77. Some alcohol. This has seen better days. I don't even think this thing even works. Hope it does. Because it's pretty empty. Pretty empty. Yeah. It's coming out. We got a lot on there, so all I'm going to do now is I'm just going to kind of stick it where I want it and pull it off real quick. Okay. Smeared it around a little bit. Yeah. We're on the clock now, baby. Yeah, it's been about 45 seconds or so. We'll just take it and place it where we want it. So you can see how nice those wire clips with the wire ties in the bottom work. All the way down. And how nice and neat. So then it runs from there, and you can see it's bare wire till it gets right there. And then it goes into another shrink tube, and it goes in between this strap here, which is for the air horn. And it comes up, gets strapped again, because this is important. This strap's important to hold this slack in the wire for the turning. So you need to keep that, and that's on that bushing that's in between the steering column right here. There's a bushing right here. So I strapped it onto there. I also finally screwed in a couple of tech screws to hold this in place now, and I reshaped it so it looks a lot better than what it did. So the battery indicator, so basically the whole front part is all done. So basically when you look at this as a profile, because the bike's up in the air like about 6 inches, when this sets down, you're not even be able to tell that there's any wires running down there, not from a distance. So that's what I was after. I didn't want a lot of straps. Finish up all the wiring. So I got the wires grouped from the speed controller. I got the shrink tubing. I haven't shrunk it on yet because, you know, I want to route them and then shrink it on. But right now we're getting ready to do all the wires to the terminals and hook everything up. I got all the terminals on for the wires coming from the power supply. Pretty much got it squared away. Got all the terminals from the console bar. We got the terminals from the charger for the USB charger. We got terminals on them. So all that's left now is wire everything onto this little terminal bar, and then check continuities between the wires, make sure everything's good. Okay, it's all wired up. The controller's wired up to this side, and all this stuff in the front is wired up to this side. It's all color coded, so it's all matching up. I went on, did all my continuities. Everything looks good. The motors kind of just bolting on a couple bolts there, wired up. Batteries in. Now we just need to turn it all on and see if it works. Here goes nothing. Okay, batteries on. Oop. Something's not right. Something snapped. Let's see. We fried this, so this is not good. So this is not the right one. So we're going to cut that off. There we go. Remove the wires. Let's see what we get now. Okay. Okay. Okay, it's on. Let's see if we got throttle. So everything worked except for that USB. I didn't think it was going to work out, but I can just cut that off and slide that down. That's why I didn't put a bolt on the end, because I kind of figured I was going to have to move that down just in case that didn't work. Remove the wire, I'll just leave the wires where they're at. So, this is going to end episode Lucky 7. Only thing that's left, I need to tidy up some wires in here and mount down the terminal block, and shrink up some tubes in here, some shrink tubing in here, and tidy up the wires with the special little stick-on things. That's all that's left. I decided to include this in the video because I think it's kind of important. I'm going to show you how to make up that special washer to take the slop out. That's how much slop is in it now. It's about 1/4 inch. Without that, it's more like 3/8 of an inch on both sides. And that's just way too much slop for a bicycle that has the potential of going 20 plus miles per hour, let alone up to 30. You know, they have so much slop in them. So I recommend that you do this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and take the nut off and take the washer off. But to explain to you, you don't need anything in the back. You just need a special washer in the front to fix this problem. This is our problem right here. This is our problem guy. This is the bearing. And I checked, make sure the bearing is pressed all the way in, and it is. It's as far as it's going to go. So the problem is when that nut comes and hits down on this bearing, it's catching the outer part as well, and it prevents you from tightening up the rim or the hub to the axle, forcing you to keep it real loose or super too tight. So how do we overcome this? So I tried just put a washer over it. I thought 5/8 inch washer, you know, 1.5 inch, be fine, but it was resting on the hub a little bit, but it wasn't hitting the spokes. I thought that'd be fine, but no, it still made it just as bad. So then I thought, well, maybe if I made a washer that's just 5/8 of an inch in diameter on the inside, and the outside of the washer is 1.25 inches, which will get me just below the rim of the outer bearing. So I'll be resting solely on the inner part of the bearing. And that was the ticket. Well, unfortunately for me, there's no such animal as a 5/8 inch diameter, inner diameter hole with an overall washer width of 1.25 inches. They're always 1.5 inches. So I found a 1/2 inch washer that was pretty close to my size, although I still had to grind around the edges more. So what I had to do with this is I had to file the inside so it'll fit over a 5/8. What's better about this filing rather than buying the 5/8 is it fits tighter to the axle and it fits better to the hub, because I kind of took the made a bevel in the inside here. I put a bevel on it. So so when that tightens up now, it's tightening. When it tightens up onto the bearing, it's only tightening up to the inside of the bearing, not the outside. So that way, if this washer needs to turn with that bearing, it can if it wants. Doesn't matter. So I'm going to put it back on and spin it around and show you what I mean. To begin with, when you put this on, if you put the 5/8 on there, you'll be able to move it all over the place. This don't move half as bad as 5/8, so I was able to control how well it fits. And when I put it up there, you can see it's just barely getting past these walls. But when I turn it, it turns with the bearing. So it's turning. And that's what I want. I don't want this where it acts as a brake. So that's what we want. So when I got it to that point, I thought that's good enough. So now I just put the nut on it. And you only need one of them. You don't need one in the back. Just one in the front. Because the back's not a problem. And now I'm going to show you where I had to set them before and where I'm setting them now. Sorry, it's the only thing I could find. It's 11/16, I believe. Okay. Now you can see it, I got it real tight, so it hardly wants to spin. Now I'm going to back it off a little bit. There we go, right about there. We got good free wheel movement, perfect. And that much slop. Where before, I had to have that much slop. So I took half of the slop out, which was about 3/8 of an inch of slop from side to side. Right about there. That's about where I had to have them set in order for them to keep them from locking up. Now I took out at least half of that. Now I think I'm down to like maybe 1/4 inch. There's hardly any there. Yeah, I took most of it out. There's like maybe 1/8 of an inch, if that. Hardly any. Probably could loosen it up a little bit. It might be just a little bit too tight. Loosen up just a little bit. Yeah, about 1/8 of an inch. So that's how you take the slop out of your front tires, and I recommend that you do this. What I've done here is I just went ahead and I'm gluing down these shims. This one's all glued in. They're just good enough to hold them in place, and eventually when I get the board on, we're going to check and make sure it's level this way. I know it's not level this way because this has a slight pitch to it, a downward pitch, but I'm not too worried about that so much as I am this away. Now I'm trying to get the motor lined up so when I do take it off I can do all the motor holes. I want to try to, I got this kind of lined up where I want it. I wish I could clamp it, but I can't. I want to try and get an idea where that chain is and make me a nice slot. Maybe I'm thinking almost to this, just maybe a ½ inch past the motor mount. That would probably do it. So I gotta pin that out. So what I've done here, basically, let me get the flashlight and figure out what I do with it. Oh, here it is. So what I did here is, if you look at the motor mount, it has a scribe on it. That's the center line. And there's a center line on the board that's center to this piece underneath. So that way I know the motor is perfectly centered. Remember I was saying I wanted to keep it centered and centered across this way the best I could. That's perfect spot right there. I got plenty of distance between the motor and speed controller. It's up far enough. So I marked my holes. I also have some holes marked back here. That's how far back I can go with this motor. What I mean is I can adjust it. I can get that much adjustment out of it if I wanted to, because that takes me to that from there to there is where that bar is for this right here. So that's how far I can go. So I'm going off of these holes here instead of these, because this is more center line, because those aren't. So I'm a smart person, I'll remember. So I got my cutout already for the chain. It's a cutout for the chain. The ones with the pluses on them, those are the holes I'm going to use. I got my slots put in, and this wood was a lot better than that other wood. I mean, it chipped a little bit, but not anything like that thing over there. That's ridiculous. And these are pretty easy. Where'd you go? Laying on it. Should line up to the hole. There we go. Okay, so I got the motor mounted. I haven't tightened it up, but I just want to show you I can go that far forward and I come that far back. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go far forward as much as I can, and then I'm going to go ahead and attach and set the alignment on the chain and set the chain there, and then we'll probably have, because I have to go like 2 links in order to put the master link in. So it'll probably pull back to about maybe there. Well, finally we're at that moment. So let me turn it on here and show what we got. So again, I put the old master link in it, so it seemed to be okay. So at least I'll be able to identify it. It's black. It's the only black one, only black sheep in the family. Yeah. Okay, everything's clearing. There don't seem to be any kinks in the chain. I think this thing's ready to hit the highway.